welcome to a new episode of Come and See. I'm your host, Mariam Nagy, and with us today we have John Shawqi and Megat Salah. Welcome back. Thank you.
Thanks.
For the past 2 weeks, we've spoken about ways to stay engaged in the church. This week, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We want to see how the church can keep us engaged. What does the church really do for us, and how does it keep its servants coming back, and how does it keep its youth coming back, and the kids, and so on. And I would love to hear from both of you a little bit about how you feel that the church can keep us engaged. What's really the role of the church in this?
I think the church has to look at itself almost like any other organization, right? A big part of what you do as a church is make sure that you are tapping into different avenues, so that way you are, one, engaging everyone equally, two, you are using the resources around you. So a lot of times, for example, especially with our church, newcomers, migrants coming into different countries, whether it's America, Australia, Canada, and a lot of these people look to the church as kind of like a lifeline for them. And I think when the church recognizes that, it opens different ways to actually attract them to come to the church. I know a couple of episodes, or maybe last episode, we discussed the idea of what is the role of the servant, right? And we said that the servant has to recognize the needs of each child separately. It's kind of the same thing here. The church has to understand that someone coming to the church, they are looking to be filled spiritually, but sometimes there's something else in their life that's happening that's not allowing that to happen. So for the church to be able to engage them, you have to have also social services inside of the church that can address other parts of their life. You know, in the book of Acts, you see that the church provided more than just spiritual stuff, right? So people brought their money into the church, and then the church gave out to who needed what, the widows, the orphans, things like that. So I think that's a big part of what the church needs to do to keep the congregation engaged.
Okay.
So I think the church plays a big role in our community, not just the Coptic community, but also the community that we live in. The church needs to provide opportunities for those to serve. I think when you start serving in a church, you become a member of the church. I believe that most of us go to church just to receive things, whether it's blessings, communion, repentance, the family atmosphere, but very few of us go to church to give. And I think that's a big part of it. If you want to attend church, not just to receive, but also to give. The church provides opportunities for the youth to be engaged in. For example, the choir that we host every now and then, the outreach that we do, the Arabi that we do, after church. All these things are opportunities for the youth to serve, and not just the youth, but every single member. I believe that every single member in the church, God calls upon to serve. There is no such thing as one who's called upon to serve and one that just attends church. Every one of us is called to serve. From preparing the readings on Sundays to, setting up a retreat or curating a Bible study, for people to attend. Every single service is worth it and is a huge impact on the church. So by providing these opportunities, you make every single member of the church feel that they are belonging to the church, that they have a part in the church, that this church belongs to them. Each one of us has a talent. God gave us a talent, whether preaching or giving talks or singing or outreach. If you don't,
Or doing
urban.
Yes.
Every single one of them is important to the church, and that's what creates the atmosphere that the church should provide.
What are some of the social and the spiritual activities that we can provide for them to actually be involved in?
Sunday school is a great thing. It's a great way to serve, because you're not, as we mentioned earlier in other episodes, you're not really helping them, you're helping yourself as well.
Okay.
It's a great way to reach out to those who are in need. It's a great way to reach out to those who are far away from the church.
Okay.
It gives you the opportunity to learn and to grow. So Sunday school is a big part of it. My favorite one is outreach. I think it's sometimes easy to, show up on Sunday and to give a lesson, but it's harder to make a commitment every single week, every single Sunday, every single day to reach out to those who are not attending church, to go and dedicate time to spend with them. Also creating sports activities. That's a great outreach. That's a great activity that we started doing. We do soccer every Tuesday.
Okay.
So stuff like that would help the church grow, not necessarily just from a spiritual aspect, but also from a social level.
So you mentioned being a part of a community. So it's not just us as Christians or us as the Coptic Church and so on. How do we bring our community into the church, or how do we go out there and actually serve them as well? So what is the church's role in the community as a whole?
That's the whole thing, right? Is we have to, first we got to identify what the word church means,
Okay.
right? So a lot of us look at the church as, I go to church on Sunday. That's because in our mind, the church is a building, right? But that's not what it is. The church is the saints of the church, and we're all called to be the saints of the church. So once you recognize that you are the church, I think that puts a whole new spin on things for you. So when we say the church has to go out to the world, what does that mean? That means I have to go out to the world. That means every single person in this church has to go. If we as the church, the people of the church, we're going to go out maybe every other Wednesday and go into the city and just walk around and talk to people about Christ. Every member of the church starts understanding that this is a responsibility he has to have. When Christ was ascending, he told all 12, go out and tell people about me everywhere, right? He didn't just choose 10 of them and 2 of them could stay home. So we kind of have to change the mentality first of what is the church. If you ask Abuna knows that answer. But the question is, does everybody know that answer? Does everybody know that they are the church? And once you kind of ingrain that into them, then it becomes a lot easier. Because then when they think of the church, they think of themselves. They don't think of the building and the people that are in that building while I'm here at home.
You take every opportunity to serve, to be a member, like what John is saying, to be at church. Whether if you're at work, at school, at a social gathering, you take the opportunity to talk about God, to talk about church. Often at work, obviously, I don't bring it up unless they do. But if they start talking to me about God, I'll refer them to a sermon that I heard. I was like, oh, listen, by the way, I heard this great sermon, Father so-and-so, why don't you listen to it? It might help you out. I'm bringing the church to them for them to know the Coptic Church.
Okay.
And you take every opportunity to show that and to educate them, instead of always referring to the Coptic Church, oh, it's very similar to the Greek Orthodox Church or very similar to the Russian Orthodox Church. No, we are, we have our own identity. Yeah, we are very similar, but it's on our part to inform people about the church and to bring the church to them.
It's also very important to allow the church to be an inclusive church, right? So a lot of times we kind of mix and match between the faith and between, like traditions that have to do with country versus the actual faith. And if we understand that the difference between the two, when we go and approach somebody and talk to them about the faith and talk to them about the Orthodox Church, it's a lot easier to understand because they're going to show up and they're going to see 99% a bunch of Egyptians, right? So if these people are not welcoming, if these people are looking at them like, oh, who's this stranger in my church? It's not, it's not the right way to go.
Which I think a lot of us fall into that. We're so focused and comfortable in our community that when someone comes from the outside, we're like, who is this and why are they here?
And I mean, that's the whole thing, is that
yes,
they're coming to our church because we look at the church as this building. It's like, this is my house, I own it, I go to it, and that's not what it is. But if we're looking for the church to build a community, to engage everybody that's in it and outside of it, then one servant told me once that it's not how much stuff you do, it's the quality of the stuff you do. So I think it's just making sure that we have good activities for everybody to be engaged in, whether it's a service activity, whether it's a social activity. A lot of times we try to do things a lot, and then people show up and they realize it's not well done. They don't want to show up again. So maybe quality versus quantity sometimes also helps.
So that segues really well into my next question, which you spoke about individual ways of how we can engage the outside community. So do you feel that the church, it's enough for the church to encourage us to go out there and preach and talk to others and so on? Or does the church need to actually have specific activities for us to kind of do as a community and go out there and help others and so on?
I mean, I think you have people within that body of the church that are more aware, more experienced in certain aspects of service, and that's where that person has to step in and lead. And then, whoever has that talent, like Megan mentioned, will fall into that line. They'll find themselves into that line. But you do have to have these leaders up first and kind of take the role.
So that's a good point. I want to talk about leadership in the church. How do you feel that they can be involved in getting the community more engaged? So we're talking a little bit more about the board now and maybe the priest and so on. What do you say about that?
I think they need to be involved in the community itself.
Okay.
Attending, for example, some of the fairs that are going on, attending some of the social events that they have, and not necessarily the spiritual ones, but also the social gatherings that they have, to be represented in the community. When we are out there, we represent not just the church, but the body of Christ. From our bishop to our popes to our monks to our nuns, we each have a role, and it's our leadership that are out there representing the body of Christ in the Catholic Church.
Thank you for your opinions. Thank you, and come and see what the youth will say about how the church can keep us engaged. Marlene and Amgad, welcome back. This episode we're talking about something a little bit different, which is the church itself and how the church can keep us engaged in it. So what kind of opportunities can the church give us and so on? So I want to hear your perspective as young adults in the church.
Well, the church has to be, first of all, motivating and encouraging for the teenagers and the kids. If the servants and the teachers aren't motivating, or they're just doing it because somebody called them to, the kids won't come as much because they don't feel they're needed or something. They're just coming for space and taking their time. The church has to provide opportunities like this one, and opportunities that they could serve or take leadership and responsibilities. Like when I was a child and I took just a little leadership, I felt important. I felt like everybody needs me there. I had a responsibility to fill the candles with oil. That's something that the church would have to do in order to encourage the kids, the teenagers, put them in leadership.
Okay, Marlene, what do you think?
I think that the church should have more activities that involve both spiritual guidance and social guidance. So split it in half.
Okay.
Have more stuff at church that could guide us spiritually, but also have a little bit of time at the end to be able to just sit around and talk as a group.
Okay.
Just outside of spiritual stuff.
Okay.
Social.
What are more opportunities you want to see in the church for you as young adults? Do you want more opportunities to serve? How do you feel that the church can engage you more? Maybe you want to be on the board. This is not something that's just for the adults and so on. It's for you as well. Do you want the church to give you more responsibility and so on? What are ways do you feel that the church can engage you a little bit more?
I mean, not too much responsibilities because as teenagers and in high school, we have enough stress from high school work, homework, tests, quizzes, and all that. So just not too much responsibilities, but enough to keep us engaged in the church and opportunities like taking leadership in field trips, planning field trips. Let's see, making our own sort of like clubs or activities for little ones, or planning field trips, clubs, meetings, all of those.
So you want more of a role, but in a different aspect. So something that you can do with like maybe the younger kids and so on. What do you feel that the church can do for you?
I feel like I agree. I think that the church should give us more opportunities to serve, but I also feel like that the church needs to give us more opportunities to learn from like older servants such as you
Okay.
or John or Megan or any of them. Just more opportunities to learn and serve, a good combination, not too much like responsibility, like Amgad said.
What do you feel about making decisions? Is that something that you would want to be involved in? Should the church involve its young leaders, its young youth in making its decisions?
Not big decisions, but maybe taking our advice and let's say building something new, making something new, taking our advice because when they want to make something new, they want the perspective of what they're making.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's say they're making a new club. What's that club for? Maybe little kids. Yes, we want from the perspective of little kids that when they go into that club or activity, they are really comfortable with what they're doing. And also, like a Bible study and that activity, sometimes kids or teenagers don't like to be there. So the church has to uh, get it from a different perspective and making it more interesting for those teenagers or kids, making it funnier, more like a discussion instead of just one person talking.
Okay. So do you feel that you would be more valued in a way if the church kind of changes things around for you to... Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your activities and so on. Obviously, you would want to have more voice in these things. So let's say if the church is engaging you by giving you a survey and so on, and this is something that would make you feel valued, obviously, because you're giving your opinions on what else you want to do in the church, what activities you want to do outside, and so on. Do you feel that there's anything else that the church can do, something practical, to get your opinions and so on?
I think the church is pretty much covering it all. Maybe we're missing some that I'm not sure of. But changing some of the things that the activities are going, yes, I would like to see that happen by our perspective. Like instead of making their own decisions, they can get the perspective and opinions about us and the teenagers that are more involved in the church. And yeah, the servants can also give their voice so everything can go really well. So one person doesn't plan it. Because if one person plans it, some mistakes are going to happen.
Okay. Do you feel that we're involved in our community now? The outside community. So I'm not talking about the church inside. Do you feel that you're involved in the community, or would you like to be more involved in it?
I feel like we should be more involved in the community. I don't think that we're involved enough. I think we should have certain days or certain like times where we can go and just give back to the community.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us in another episode of Come and See.